In this lecture, we're going to study about interaction modeling. Interaction modeling covers different types of diagrams like use case diagrams, sequence diagrams, and activity diagrams. Overall, if we talk about interaction modeling, it is providing an underlying structure or a blueprint for how a system or a product behaves based on a known user behavior. I'll talk about different levels of abstraction in interaction modeling first. There are different levels of abstraction. At the highest level comes the use case diagrams. We have studied use case diagram earlier in my previous lecture, and this provides the highest level of interaction. Why? Because it describes how a system interacts with outside actors. And it is basically useful for capturing informal requirements. The second level of abstraction comes the sequence diagrams. Sequence diagrams provide more detailing to the use case diagrams. So this is in another level of abstraction, whereas it is showing the messages which are exchanged between different objects and how the objects are communicating between each other and in what sequence. If we talk about more detailing, then comes the activity diagrams, which further provide detail and show the flow of control among different steps of computation. So these are the prerequisites which are required to study sequence diagrams. You should have a basic knowledge about UML. Object-oriented programming concepts should be clear. You should know what do you understand by interaction modeling, and you should know what are use case diagrams, or you should have a basic knowledge about use case model, because here in sequence diagrams, we are elaborating the use case diagrams. Now, first of all, what is a sequence diagram? As the word is suggesting, sequence means we are identifying or detailing certain steps or a sequence in a particular diagram. So here in interaction modeling, there will be different objects which will be identified, and the communication which takes place between these different objects would be taken care of. So we go by the definition as a sequence diagram in unified modeling language illustrates the sequence of messages between objects in an interaction. So how one object is interacting with the other object and the third object, or what kind of communication is being established and in what sequence is taken care of. This will be the outcome of a sequence diagram. So if we summarize, the purpose of sequence diagrams would be that it is in the transition from requirements expressed as use cases, and we are providing more detail to the use cases to the next level. And the sequence diagrams can be used to document how the objects in an existing system, they are currently interacting. Now, if I talk about the notations, in sequence diagrams, we have vertical lines which are represented as the lifelines. So here, if I tell you, these kind of vertical lines will be shown, as we will see in further examples, but these will be the vertical lines which will be shown. And suppose this is object 1, which is taken care of, and there is one more object, object 2, which is being communicated with, and these two objects are interacting. So what are the lifelines of these two objects? These two objects are existing for the whole lifeline. And how they are communicating? Object 1 is requesting something to object 2 first, and then object 2 is replying to object 1. So if we read the communication, we read from top to bottom. So the messages are shown by the horizontal lines with arrowheads, so that we are clear with what is the flow of message from which object to which object. And the lifelines are represented by rectangular vertical lines. Now, each use case, it requires one or more sequence diagrams to describe its behavior. We can say if we have one use case diagram, it can be elaborated into 2 or 3 or more sequence diagrams. It is not necessary that one use case model would be elaborated only in one sequence diagrams. No, use case model or use case diagram can be elaborated in 2 or 3 or more sequence diagrams, and each sequence diagram shows a particular behavior sequence of the use case. Let's see this by an example. Now, this example consists of 3 objects, and we are talking about the online stockbroker system. It consists of 3 objects: the customer, the stockbroker system, and the securities exchange. All these three objects have full lifeline. That means these rectangles are shown by full lifeline. The customer, the stockbroker system, and the securities exchange, these 3 objects exist for the full lifeline. First message which is passed will be passed by the customer object to the stockbroker system. And what is the message passed? That the customer wants to log in. What will be the reply of stockbroker system? At its own end, it will first verify whether this customer is a valid customer, and then it will develop a secure communication. It will reply back the customer. Then the customer, after logging in, and the stockbroker system will display the portfolio to the customer. This has provided the logging in to the customer. Now the customer will enter the purchase data to the stockbroker system. The stockbroker system in turn will verify the funds. If there are sufficient funds for the customer to purchase the stocks, it will reply back as it will request for a confirmation from the customer. When the customer will confirm the purchase, the stockbroker system in turn will display the order number, and as well it will also place the order to the securities exchange. Now these 2 messages, the display order number and the place order, these 2 messages will be running simultaneously, or these 2 messages or these 2 signals are called concurrent signals because they are being passed at the same time. They are not shown a top and bottom in this sequence. They are shown at the same time, the display order number and place order. After the order is being executed, the securities exchange will report the results of trade to the stockbroker system. And the customer, when it requests for a logout to the stockbroker system, the stockbroker system develops an insecure communication and displays a goodbye to the customer. So this is how a customer in this sequence diagram is logging in. He is entering the purchase data, he is requesting something, and also he is logging out. So these 3 or 4 things or steps, they are shown in one diagram. What can be done is a sequence diagram can also show large scale interactions as well as smaller constituent tasks. So we can break down these steps into smaller sequence diagrams. As in, this particular sequence diagram will reduce the number of steps. See how the customer is entering the purchase data. So the logging in information is not shown in this sequence diagram. After entering the purchase data, the stockbroker system verifies the funds, requests for confirmation. When the customer is confirming the purchase, it will display the order number and place the order to the securities exchange, wherein the securities exchange will report the results of trade, and the sequence diagram is complete. So herein what I'm trying to say is that we can break down a larger sequence diagram into smaller constituent tasks as well, just to bring in more clarity to the sequence diagrams. Now see here also, one more constituent task is shown, wherein there are again the 3 objects are here. The customer is entering the stock symbol. The stockbroker system is requesting the stock data. The security exchange is reporting the results of trade, and it is displaying the quote to the customer. So this is another case of another sequence which is being developed among these three set of objects only, right? Again, one more sequence diagram can be there, like the customer is entering the purchase data, and after verifying this, after the stockbroker system is verifying the funds, it shows it has insufficient funds. So it says the purchase is being rejected. So the customer cancels the purchase, right? So what we have seen here is a particular use case is being broken down into different sequence diagrams. And here we have seen 4 sequence diagrams. There can be more sequence diagrams as well. So one particular use case model can be divided into number of steps. Fine. Now, one more case I'll be taking to explain more cases of sequence diagrams. And this case explains that whenever we have these lifelines, what we are talking about. Now, these lifelines can be of smaller size as well. Can you see this transaction object? And the lifeline of this transaction object is full length. That means this object transaction is existing for full lifeline over here. Fine. But in another case, the customer table, this particular object only has a smaller lifeline. It exists only when it is being requested, and the lifeline ends as soon as its job is over. Similarly, the rate table also has a smaller lifeline. It only comes into existing when something is requested and its job is finished when its task is finished. So the lifeline needs not to be full length. We can cut down the lifeline as well. Let's see the example. This transaction object is being asked to compute commission over here. Now, to compute the commission, it has requested the service level to the customer table. As soon as it requests the service level to the customer table, this lifeline comes into existence. It returns the level, and again, the purpose of this customer table is being resolved. So the lifeline is very short. When the transaction is calculating the commission over here, it has got the level, it transferred the level and the transaction to the rate table, and it calculates the commission. As soon as the rate table calculates the commission, it returns the commission, and the rate table object's lifeline is finished. As soon as the transaction object gets the commission, it returns the outcome as commission wherever it was being requested for. So the purpose over here is that the objects need not to exist for full length lifeline. We can represent the lifeline into shorter forms by shortening the length of these vertical lines. Another case I would be taking will be of these three objects, object A, object B, and object C. Now here you can see object A, it is existing for full length lifeline over here. Object B instead is existing for a smaller period of lifeline. And herein we will discuss the case of recursion over here. An object C is being created upon a function's call and is being destroyed after it is executing the order. So the destroying symbol would be shown by a cross over here. So now if we go, object A is executing an operation E, wherein two arguments are being passed, C, D. As soon as this function is being called, the object B comes into existence, where it asks for creating C. An object C is being created on this call. As soon as the object C is being created, it executes the order and it returns operation E, M, N. Now, here comes the role of recursion. Now, see, can you see this operation and this operation is the same function. Whenever a function, it calls itself, it is called recursion. So over here, this operation is being called in the lifeline of object B, and again object C is calling the same operation in this lifeline. So we have shown it here, a rectangle, a vertical rectangle inside a vertical rectangle. So whenever we want to show recursion, it is shown as a rectangle, vertical rectangle inside a vertical rectangle. After the recursion is over, it gives the output as result V and gives the output to object A. So here in this sequence diagram case, we have seen one case of recursion, as well one case that how an object is being created upon a function call, wherein object C is being created upon a function call of create C, and how this object gets destroyed after its operation is being finished. We show it by a cross symbol. So there are several cases of sequence diagrams which we have discussed, the major cases. Rest we will cover in next lecture. So these were the references which you can refer to. This was all about sequence diagrams. Thank you.